By 1453, the Byzantine Empire had reached its final days. The massive Roman legacy that once spanned 3 continents had been reduced to a single city, Constantinople. It sat as a tiny Christian-held enclave deep within the heart of the expanding Ottoman Empire. For centuries, the city's location made it an impossible target. Dozens of previous sieges had failed because the technology of medieval warfare could not overcome the city's unique combination of water and stone. To the west, the land approach was blocked by the Theodosian Walls. This triple-layered fortification successfully repelled every major invasion for 1,000 years. To the north, the harbor of the Golden Horn was equally inaccessible. The Byzantines protected this vital waterway with a massive iron chain stretched from shore to shore, physically barring any enemy fleet from entering. This was the obstacle facing the 21-year-old Sultan Mehmet II. Fiercely ambitious and driven by religious prophecy, Mehmet saw himself as the heir to the Roman legacy, the Kaiser-i-Rum, and he was determined to take the city that had eluded all his predecessors. Mehmet realized that traditional medieval tactics would only lead to another failure. To succeed, he would have to find a way to circumvent the very geography that had protected the city for a millennium. Mehmet's first move was to turn the city's greatest strength, its walls, into a liability. He hired a Hungarian engineer named Orban to cast the largest bronze siege weapons the world had ever seen. The largest of these, the basilica, was 27 feet long. It was designed to fire 1,200-pound stone balls with enough force to shatter the ancient stone fortifications of the Theodosian Walls. When the bombardment began on April 6th, it marked the end of the era of passive starvation sieges. The Ottoman army was now using heavy artillery to systematically dismantle the city's defenses. However, the technology was not yet perfect. The massive cannons took 3 hours to reload, which allowed the Byzantine defenders to repair the breaches in the walls every night using timber and rubble. Meanwhile, the Ottoman navy remained stuck behind the iron chain in the Golden Horn. Frontal assaults on the land walls were repulsed with heavy losses, and by late April, Ottoman morale was beginning to collapse. Despite his superior firepower, the harbor chain was still paralyzing the invasion. To win, Mehmet needed a way to move his fleet into the Golden Horn without using the water. Mehmet's solution was an engineering project that defied conventional military logic. If he couldn't break the chain, he would simply bypass the sea entirely. On the night of April 22nd, he ordered his troops to construct a runway of greased logs over the hills of the Galata district. Over the course of a single night, the Ottomans manually dragged over 70 warships overland. They crossed the hills and dropped them directly into the Golden Horn, appearing behind the iron chain. This maneuver forced Emperor Constantine to stretch his 7,000 soldiers to their absolute limit. They were now required to defend the harbor walls, a section of the city that had been considered safe for 1,000 years. On May 29th, Mehmed launched a final assault in 3 separate waves. He used his irregular troops to tire the defenders, followed by his professional Anatolian soldiers to widen the breaches in the walls. The city finally fell through a combination of exhaustion and chance. A small postern gate called the Kirkoporta was accidentally left unlocked, allowing Ottoman soldiers to flood the inner walls and collapse the Byzantine defense. After 53 days, the city that had repelled invaders for a millennium was taken. It didn't fall to traditional bravery alone, but to a radical circumvention of the physical rules of the battlefield. Mehmed entered the city later that day and immediately visited the Hagia Sophia. By converting the world's largest cathedral into a mosque, he signaled the end of Roman rule and a new Islamic identity for the city. He renamed the city Istanbul and established it as the new Ottoman capital. By controlling the Bosphorus Strait, he now held an absolute monopoly over the Silk Road trade routes into Europe. The success of Mehmed's basilica cannon changed military strategy across the globe. Within decades, the tall, thin walls that had defined medieval defense were being replaced by low, thick earthworks designed specifically to absorb cannon fire. The fall of the city also displaced thousands of Greek scholars who fled to Italy with ancient texts, fueling the birth of the Renaissance. Simultaneously, the closing of land routes to Asia forced European powers to seek new maritime paths across the Atlantic. In 1453, the walls of Constantinople were the strongest on Earth. When they fell, the resulting shock waves, from the birth of the Renaissance to the launch of the Age of Discovery, brought the medieval world to a definitive close.